Nope. Forget it. As if. Not in this lifetime. Ooh. I have spent an embarrassing amount of money trying to replace these knitting needles. And I'm just going to say it. Most of them are not even close. Now, before we get into it, there is a new member of the household I would like you to meet. Yes, and be nice. This is Felix. He is 2 years old and was scooped off the streets of Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, about 2 months ago. He's Oscar's new mini-me, and he has exactly one speed, which is go. So if at any point in this video you see chaos in the background, that's not my needles. That's Felix. All right, today we are talking about knitting needles. Specifically, I am trying to answer one question. Will anything ever measure up to my signature Needle Arts needles with stiletto tips? These don't exist anymore. Well, obviously they exist. They're here, but you can't buy them. They have been out of production since July 2023, and ever since, I have been on a mission to find something, anything, that even comes close. I have bought so many needles, expensive needles. Some of them are pretty close to excellent. Some of them are fine. Some of them, well, we're going to talk about them. I'm going to try not to, Oscar, but I will be honest. You might feel like I'm picking on your favorite needles, but that's not my intention. This is about my knitting experience with all of these brands. My experience may not be your experience, and I fully acknowledge that I am very, very spoiled. Signature needles were a very premium brand, and I am truly fortunate to have the resources to own as many of them as I do. Okay, Nicole, so what's the big fat hairy deal about Signature Arts needles? Before we talk about the contenders, we need to talk about what made these so good, because otherwise all of this is just going to sound like me being dramatic. The tips are the obvious thing. These are stiletto tips. They are incredibly sharp, but not fragile, not pokey in a way that splits your yarn. They're just very precise. They go exactly where you want them to go. And the tips have a long taper and a shape that no other needle has been able to duplicate. They make all kinds of stitch manipulations as easy as pie. I've never quite understood what was so easy about pie. Isn't making good pie crusts like the hardest thing you can do in baking? Sorry, I digressed again. Yeah, all right, Oscar. If you ever knit anything even slightly technical, tight stitches, decreases, lace, anything where you're working into a stitch instead of just through it, you can feel the difference immediately. But honestly, the tip is only part of the story. The color-coded shaft has just enough grip to hold your stitches without slowing you down. So that combination, the slick tip and the slightly grippy shaft, is weirdly hard to find. The joins are excellent. Part of this excellence is a feature that all other interchangeable needle brands have refused to duplicate. Each needle shaft size has its own corresponding cable. For this reason, these needles are not entirely interchangeable because you can't put a 3.5 millimeter cable on a 4 millimeter needle. Yes, this means that you have to buy many more cords if you want all the lengths to fit every needle size. And that in itself explains why other brands don't do this. It's pretty much very cost prohibitive for the majority of the market, but it definitely creates the smoothest cord to needle transition out there. And it's probably why we won't see needles exactly like this ever again. More on that later. The sizes smaller than a 3.25 millimeter, a US 3, are on fixed clear cables. And speaking of the cords, they are super flexible without being floppy, making them ideal for magic loop. And the swivel attachment actually works, which means that often hand tightening is all you need. Notice there are no holes for a tightening tool. Now, the downside of that is that you lose out on a convenient way to add a lifeline to your work. But for me, because I pretty much never add lifelines, it's a minor detail. They did come with a little grippy pad that would give you that little extra torque as you join them. Once you use this, these do not come apart during use because of the natural rotation of a needle as you knit. The sizes below 3 1/4 do not swivel. The interchangeables came in 3 tip lengths, 4 inches, 5 inches, and 6 inches, and 3 tip point profiles. Stiletto, which are these, and my favorite, midi, and blunt. I have no opinions on the midi or blunt tips because all of my signature needles are stiletto tip. And in the fixed circs, you could get these wee tiny little sock or sleeve needles with the super short tips on them. I bought a couple of sets of these just because, but I'm not a big fan of using these needles. If you want to hear all about why, you can go watch my video on my love-hate relationship with sock knitting. They also made beautiful sets of DPNs and straight needles. I don't have any of the DPNs, but I do have one set of teeny tiny straights. I think they came as a freebie with one of my last orders. These are 2.25 millimeter needles. So honestly, I'm probably not going to use them very much, which is probably why they were a freebie. But they could be really great for small projects with small gauges. And they're just super pretty. And then there are the extra details. The sizing is etched into the shaft. It doesn't wear off. And the color-coded shafts not only make them beautiful, but also makes identifying the size at a glance a piece of cake. Easy as pie? Piece of cake? No more scrambling for a needle sizer because the printed number wore off. The color coding has made organizing and storing my collection of signature needles a breeze. At first, I used this special binder page created by Thread and Maple for my signature needle storage. The needle tips, as you can see, were up here. They are all engraved with the size into the leather, and then the cords could be kept in these corresponding pockets, zipper pockets down below. Great idea, very clever of Thread and Maple to make these, but my collection of these needles quickly outgrew the system, and I had to come up with something else. Now I keep them in a binder with colored zip sliders that match the color of the needles. So cool, right? And yes, the colors do repeat, but they're separated by several sizes. So I'm not going to mistake my 3.75s for my 6mm needles. And finally, despite my unrelenting abuse of my knitting needles, these last. This was my first set. They're the only ones I own with 6-inch tips. I bought these in 2012. With the shipping, they cost me $50 US. One set of needles. I know, it was a splurge, but I needed to know what all the fuss was about. I have used these needles for every project that called for 4mm needles for 8 years before I started buying more of this brand. They look brand new. You'd think I had just pulled them out of the package. Compared to the wear and tear you're going to see on some of my other well-used needles, this is a bit of a miracle. These weren't just good needles. These were thoughtful needles, practical, beautiful, special. Not just smitten, completely infatuated. And much to my dismay, they don't make them anymore. On July 12th, 2023, the saddest email arrived in my inbox announcing that they were starting the process of shutting down the business as of that day. I then went about buying up as much of their remaining stock as I could sanely justify. And yes, I now have a hearty collection of these amazing needles. So why do I need to be so focused on finding a replacement, especially when they are clearly built to last? Because, my friend, of you. Every time I use my SIGs in a demo, I get questions about the kind of needles I'm using. Then I have to explain what they are while dropping the bad news that you cannot buy them. The next question is always, well, what else is out there that's the same? And, because I'm me, I can't just let this question go unanswered. And so, my quest to find an alternative. Let's take a look and see how it's going so far. Let's start with the one that everybody brings up and may very well be your go-to needle, the Chinese brand ChaioGoo, which translates roughly into highly skillful and crafty lady. If we're talking about engineering, ChaioGoo is probably the most consistently well-made interchangeable system on the market right now. These aren't interchangeable, but they're what I have in this type. The cables are fantastic if you like this kind of cable. They don't coil, they just behave. Once you've used them, you will notice when other cords don't. For me, though, this much springiness means that they're not really ideal for magic loop. You don't want a lot of tension on the stitches at the loop point of your work. And when you've got a springy needle like this, you do get some tension. Here's a proper interchangeable. The joins are very, very good. Not invisible, but close enough that you're not thinking about it all the time. And the tips are sharp, especially on the proper lace tips. but they're not the same as the stilettos. And for me, that's partly where they still fall short. They are pretty excellent needles. They just don't quite give me that easy feeling that the signatures did. Some of them have quite a bit more drag than I prefer. Some people like that. I notice it. The relatively new Forte set is their luxury version. It is beautiful. It feels premium, but it doesn't fundamentally change the knitting experience. It's still a ChaioGoo system. It does include optional swivel cords, and the cord sizing for these needles comes in small and large, so they are a little bit more closely aligned to the actual needle shaft than other interchangeable systems. But again, not like the signatures. Am I sounding like a broken record? And at about $500 Canadian for the set, not a budget set of interchangeables. So for me, very good, close-ish, but not it. Felix, we talked about you chewing on my stuff. Next up is the Lykke Flight stainless steel set. These are the ones I mostly reach for aside from my signatures right now. And I'm going to describe these in a way that sounds like a backhanded compliment, but it really isn't. They don't do anything badly. They're smooth, they're consistent, the tips are aggressively sharp, even more than my signatures. But they don't have that long taper in the tip that somehow makes a difference. Maybe it's psychosomatic. I don't know, and I don't care. It's different. The finish is a bit slicker than the ChaioGoo, so they do go a bit faster. The tips are a bit slicker than the shaft itself. I think they've brushed the shaft a little bit, but it's still not the same experience as this. The joins are good, not invisible, not annoying, just good. And they do swivel, so big points there. But the cords are almost identical to those springy ChaioGoo cords, maybe even more springy. They're silver instead of red. And obviously there's no color coding, there's no etching, the sizes are printed on, and I already know they're going to wear off. These are my current, I don't want to think about my needles, which is exactly why I use them, and also why they don't quite replace my signatures. Yeah, glowing adjacent. And now Knitter's Pride, or KnitPro, depending on where and when you bought your needles. They have lots of different needle lines, and they all feel like they're solving different problems. Let's start with carbons. Carbons are trying to give you strength and control. You've got that grippy carbon fiber shaft that's very strong with a slick metal tip for precision. In theory, it's a great idea, and I did use these a lot when I first bought this set. In practice, I can feel the transition between the two materials, and once I can feel that, I can't unfeel it. The printed sizes wear off, and I definitely have rubbed off all the good coating, especially at the join areas. And then there are the cubics, which were my go-to for several years. I actually bought many sets, probably 3 full sets of these, which is why you could see I have so many duplicates. I have another whole case just for my bigger sizes. And the cubics are solving a different problem. They're about grip and ergonomics. The square shape of the needle, the profile, gives you more contact with the needle as you're knitting, which can help both with tension and, some people say, with hand fatigue. Some people absolutely love them. I truly felt like cubic needles helped fix my tension quite a bit in the days before I discovered combination knitting, which completely fixed everything. The printed on sizings have done an okay job of sticking around, but you can see how much of the plating I have rubbed off in use. Maybe I have particularly acidic finger sweat? Is that a thing? This lovely rosewood version of the cubics soften that speedy nickel-plated experience a bit. They're warmer, they're quieter, but they're still in that same controlled knitting category. These are definitely tools designed for specific needs, not necessarily for everything. You would use these when you want to slow down a very slippery and quick yarn. So, KnitPro Knitter's Pride, pretty good, but definitely not it. It's been a long, long time since I've picked up any of these to use them. This adorable set are Tulip bamboo needles. I bought these from Modern Daily Knitting because K&N did a very, very good job of selling me on their great attributes. These needles are really mostly about comfort. They're warm, they're quiet, they're forgiving. If your yarn is very slippery or you tend to have loose tension, bamboo can be really helpful. And they do have a very good swivel join, which I love, and flexible cables, both points in their favor. And they have this super cute little compact carrying case. The first time I went to use these 3.25s, Oscar accidentally stepped on one and snapped it. You can see the damage right there. Felix did not do it, Oscar. This happened many years ago, before Felix was even born. But despite the cuteness and warmth and loveliness, you do give something up. These tips are not going to give you that crisp entry into tight stitches. You're going to be easing your way in, not slicing through like I like. And if you're used to sharper metal needles, this can feel really slow. They are lovely to use. The joins are okay, but they're not efficient, not for me. And the super cuteness comes with a pretty premium price tag. This set is about $330 Canadian. Here's another big player in the interchangeables game, Addi. Addis are made by Skassel, which is an American company with German roots. And I'm going to separate out the different types of Addi needles because they are not the same experience. The Addi lace fixed circulars with the gold tips are actually very nice needles, smooth, reasonably sharp, very pleasant for straightforward knitting, good flexible cables. And for a while, I really embraced the speed of the Addi turbos. Remember I talked about the late great Kat Bordy in my recent video about Mobius knitting? The link is up there somewhere. Well, in the late 1990s, Kat invested in a few pairs of Addi turbo needles and then discovered a way to knit socks more quickly and easily using 2 circular needles instead of double points. It's an alternative to Magic Loop. Of course, she was excited to share the method, so she wrote a book appropriately titled Socks Soar on Two Circular Needles. That book, distributed by Skassel at the time, took Cat, the Addi Turbo circular needles, and sock knitting all to new heights. So, no shade for Addi needles here, except the Addi click system. This is where I struggle. This push and turn join is convenient, but it's bulky and catchy. You can feel it. And once you feel it, it becomes a thing that you notice instead of your knitting. And it has a tendency to pop apart while you're knitting if you twist the needles the wrong way. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I'm not the only one who has experienced this issue with these needles. Also, and this has nothing to do with the quality of the needles, these short tips just don't work for me. I prefer longer tips. These just make my hands feel like there isn't enough to hang on to. And this case, look at it. And no, the dogs did not get a hold of this or chew on it. This is just from hanging around on my shelves. Now, to be fair, the newer sets seem to come in a canvas case more like the Lykke case than this leather, whatever it is, that sheds like a stressed out dog on his way to the vet. Calm down, Oscar. So the new case may be an improvement, but overall, a convenient system, not so much a clean, refined knitting experience for me. And then we have my very old KnitPicks interchangeables. I've had these since probably around 2007, 8, somewhere around there. But over time, the plating wore off, joints would loosen, the cords would break or just pop out, and they just did not hold up to long-term use. These really feel like an earlier generation of interchangeables. They did their job. They were what I could afford at the time, and now they're not even close. They're retired. Maybe when we've got Felix fully trained to take your place? Okay, you guys, don't make me come over there. Now, let's talk about something that has some in-the-know signature fans hopeful. When Signature Needle Arts shut down their business, they also noted that they were open to someone buying it from them. There have been announcements circulating that ChaioGoo is bringing Signature Needle Arts into their company with plans to reintroduce the brand. So this is not just random internet rumor. There actually is something happening. What we don't have yet is the details. We don't know when they're coming. We don't know exactly what they'll look like. And most importantly, we don't know if they're going to recreate the original or reinterpret it, because those are not the same thing. ChaioGoo makes excellent needles, but they are not signature needles. So the question is, are we getting a true revival or a new version inspired by them? If they manage to combine ChaioGoo's engineering with Signature's tip design, that could be interesting. We are cautiously optimistic. So, did I find a replacement for my signature needles? No. What I found is a spectrum of very good options, all of which involve some kind of compromise. Right now, I reach for my Lykke Flights. They're the closest match for how I like to knit with my signatures, but I'm still looking. And the second those new signature needles, whatever they turn out to be, hit the market, I will be first in line. And you will absolutely get a full review. Now I want to hear from you. Favorites? Disasters? Worth every penny or money poured down the drain? I know you have needle experiences to share. And if you have found something that truly rivals my SIGs, convince me. And if you had some fun today, picked up a nugget or two of new info, please boop that like button, maybe share this video with your bestest knitting pal, subscribe if you want to be notified when I have new content. Any of that makes a difference for the growth of this channel. I say goodbye. Oscar and Felix say goodbye. Keep whatever needles you are using clicking, and we look forward to visiting with you next time. Bye!